where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. On deck today, we have Sam Brown and Missy Truscott. Did I say that right?
Truscott.
Truscott.
Yeah.
I know I was going to mess it up. I was too worried about the other part of the intro to focus on that. So, how are you?
Doing good.
This is where it gets weird, right?
So we just trained legs today,
Yeah.
hamstrings and quads, and my CNS is a little shot right now, so I'm a little shaky, but I'm so thankful that you guys had us out here today, and it's always good to be here and train with you guys, so I'm very thankful for that.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming out. We're trying to start a tradition here where we talk a little bit about industry news, right? So, Sam, what do we got?
Absolutely. First on the docket today, 8-time Mr. Olympia Lee Haney was in an interview, I think just a few days ago, talking about how essentially the intermediate or beginner bodybuilder has so much access to information and needs to essentially develop a skill of deciphering information and having a bullshit detector. I think that's something that Elite FTS has done such a good job of being able to kind of instill that bullshit detector. But Missy, obviously you've been a bodybuilder for quite some time here, and I'm sure that you've heard some amazingly crappy information coming up, especially as a younger athlete. What do you think about bodybuilders today having to kind of decipher through so much crap and noise?
Yeah. I think with social media, it's really easy to get entangled in that, garbage information. But I think if you kind of, look to the guys before, me, before us, Dave, yourself, John Meadows, you guys put out great information, great content, stuff that we can learn from. And I think if you do your research and, try to find people who are putting out that good information, kind of cling to them and see what they're doing and follow that.
What was the advice that he gave, or was he just making a statement?
Pretty much making a statement saying that there needs to be a little bit more deciphering between information. You just can't take everything as gospel, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, right?
There's a ton of
there's
information.
a lot. So how did you navigate that, right? So when did you, I don't want to dig too deep into the history because we'll save that for a little bit later, but when did you turn pro?
2012.
Okay, so in how many years were you training kind of competitively before training, or at the national level, in state level?
Honestly, like a year.
A year.
It wasn't very long.
So let's go back then, right? So we're going 2011. So social media it was definitely a thing. Instagram probably wasn't what, I think it was more photos at that time, right?
Yeah, like Facebook was big. Forums were big at the time.
So how were you navigating the information? Were you just getting it from the gym, or were you getting it, you see what I'm saying? So how did you navigate that landscape?
A little bit through Facebook. I followed people like bigger name bodybuilders, Jay Cutler, Evan Centopani, those kind of guys, John Meadows, obviously. And that's kind of how I maneuvered my way through, like, what's the bullshit, what's not? Like, what are these guys doing? How can I improve? So I kind of looked up to them.
What sent off red flags? Like, if you went someplace other than them, what were some of the red flags that you're like, oh, I don't know about that?
A lot of like the fad dieting and training, that type of stuff. At that time, I feel like, women were kind of putting out like those booty programs and everything. Actually, that's still going on right now. Like, buy my program. It's just like booty work or whatever. But the way you grow a booty is you got to do squats. Like, we all know that. It's not like kickbacks and stuff, it's heavy weight, moving it.
And not only that, I mean, just being a woman in the space, there's even less of a consideration for you being a woman, right? Like, hormonally, it's just a different animal altogether. Like, you have to deal with things that men don't have to deal with. And for years, I imagined all that information, or the majority of that information, was coming from a male source.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's just very interesting to see, especially with how much is on social media for, these quick programs, is like abs in 30 days or 4 weeks to a bigger this, that, and the other thing. And I really respect the information that you put out there, and in terms of like your training and what you do, because of the fact that it's like you're busting your ass, and it's like, this is how you get better.
Yeah.
This is how you get it to look better, is by putting the work in, right?
Totally, yeah.
So I see two sides of this conversation, right? I see that the information there's overwhelming amounts of information. I don't think that's a bad thing, right? So
Right.
when I was coming up, I don't want to, I guess people already know I'm fucking old, right? So when I was coming up, you had magazines and you had the books and you had, the
Cave-
gym bro,
cave
or
walls.
cave walls,
Yeah, right.
Stuff like that. And that information in part really wasn't that much better or worse than the information we have now. It's just so much more. So sometimes I think when I see things like what we're talking about, I don't think we're giving people enough credit. Like, we're just assuming that everybody's completely stupid and they can't tell the difference between A and B.
Right.
Now, yes, there are people that make that up, but just based upon what you said, you kind of picked up on that real quick. And I think most people kind of pick on it real quick. So the one part of me is like, you know what, it's kind of fun to bash on all these people, but they kind of get more credit than they really deserve, like the booty programs and the stuff that you're talking about. Because I'm sure they're selling certain demographic, but it's not the demographic I think that we're going to be influencing.
Right.
They're going to be in and out within a couple months. Now, and maybe those people have to go through that. Then they go through that, then they find a legitimate source or whatever it's going to be. So I don't think the overwhelming amount of information is necessarily a bad thing, right? Because even with, there is a lot of, I'm trying to think of just like general news, right? General news right now on both ends of the spectrum is pretty much just propaganda bullshit. And I don't care what anybody says. It's really hard to find that in between real news that's in the middle, that if you're really politically oriented or looking for something, that's where you're going to find. That's not true when it comes to training. Right. There definitely is, vast, propagandized content, I would suppose, in the industry on both, but it's very small. Like, most of it, even the crap that you're looking at, most of it still got decent principles.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's a stupid program, but and there are bad ones. I'm not saying there's not bad ones, but even the stupid ones that you're looking at, you're like, oh man. And if you really look at, what you start thinking, well, that's not really that bad if somebody is a total beginner.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think our middle, right, if we're talking about news, is really, really big, and then the bull crap on each side is really, really small, where in mainstream media, it's the opposite. Right?
Yeah.
So my fear, I guess, would be, granted that all sports are basically just a microcosm of life, right? Is that where we're heading? So that and I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
But I think we can see that through the content that's being released and coming out now. And I'm going to say no, because John and I just released a hell of a book. How's that for a sales plug? I didn't even think about that.
Slip that right in.
Yeah, slip that right in there. But I don't know. I think it makes for a pretty interesting conversation to think about, though.
I think you have a point with that. I think for the most part, I think a lot of the programs that you see either being sold on Instagram or wherever provide a stepping stone to bigger and better things for most people, right? It's like, is that the perfect program? No. But if it's a program that then leads them to growing and developing into whatever next phase they have, or it leads them to elite FTS or whatever, it has value. It may not be the face level value of this is a good program, but if they're like, okay, I ran this Booty Builder 3.0 and I didn't get much results, but it led me to understanding like, oh, I got more results from squats. It's like, okay, now like you're starting to kind of develop that sort of knowledge over time.
Yep.
Yeah. So what you got next on the list?
So actually, we had a few super chats just pop in really quick. Missy, we have It's Rabbit from back home. Much love from the 705.
We need some explaining with that. But anyhow, go ahead.
Go. And just dropped some money in for the milk fund again, for Dave's milk fund. Also, one question specifically for Missy.
Hold on. What is the 705?
705 is like the area code I grew up.
Oh, okay.
Canada.
Okay. I thought it was your squad.
No.
So we have, actually this kind of leads into that conversation that we just had. Where did you find the best sources for female-specific bodybuilding and nutritional information?
Let's stop for a minute, though, real quick, because this is fitness.
Right.
right? So I'm going to speak for you real quick here.
Okay.
They're different sports. There's a lot of similarities, but there are different sports. So let's just pause for a minute. And for our listeners that may not know
Sure.
what this is, right? So I don't know if we said that you're the reigning Miss Olympia. Is that what they say?
Yeah.
What do they call the Ms.Fitness
Ms.Fitness
Olympia?
Olympia.
Miss
Right?
Fitness Olympia.
Okay.
Yep.
So bring us up to speed, or bring them up to speed on what that category is.
Sure. So, being Miss Fitness Olympia, we have to do, basically, we get judged on 2 rounds. So, we're doing our physique round, which is in your bikini, and then you're doing a 2-minute fitness routine, which is the back flips, the 1-arm push ups, that kind of stuff, showing your endurance and like agility.
Okay. And you're currently what?
Number 1 in the world.
Really effing
yes,
good.
yes. Currently the best in the world.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other conversation we're going to kind of dig into here
Yeah, I'm
later.
excited.
But
Yeah, I got a few
so-
questions with that too.
that's important to note, because there's only one of you, right?
That's right.
But there's only also one
Miss
person that
Fitness
has that
Olympia.
title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating. Obviously, bodybuilding is big, but when you have, and we were talking about this earlier, is when you incorporate that athletic power background that you need to compete at
Yeah.
when you are the most drained
Right.
physically, right,
Yeah.
from dieting down. It's amazing. It's like a whole different sport. It's like a whole different thing.
Well, there's different demands. I mean, some
Yeah.
of what Sam and I were talking about behind your back, but we kind of told you about it a little bit, is
Yeah.
when we were looking at, how your back was overtaking some of the movements that you were doing earlier,
Yep.
is there's a typical correction, like here's what we need to correct, but then, I'm stepping in saying, hey, no, wait a minute, we need to pause.
Yeah.
And we need to look at this specific sports demands that she's under, because there's always imbalances associated with every sport, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked you about your abdominal wall when you jump, when you flip, and all the other kind of stuff, is because we're trying to teach a brace down on that.
Yep.
Can that inhibit, that other part? So that's the crazy thing that we came up with, right? Because these 2 sports, if you're looking at what you got to present on stage from a physique standpoint, is so counter
So different.
to what the other
Yeah.
is, right? So
Definitely.
you would never have a gymnast train with that type of intensity for that type of muscular development.
Right.
It's completely different training.
Yep.
So this is the crazy part. Your sport specific training, or your GPP, or the weight training, isn't GPP, it's SPP, and it's not even really helping your sport.
Right.
That part of the sport. So that's where it's like, okay, fuck. What are the sport demands? From a strength coaching standpoint, you
Right.
got to look at what's necessary, what's specific, what can be, accumulated over, how to manage fatigue. How do all these things play in? And so many of them kind of like fight each other, which makes it a really freaking interesting sport.
It's super difficult in the sense, like, with
You think?
with
Well, even in our conversation, it was just like, how does that work?
right. With all the heavy lifting that I do, that's super important that I am like stretching out and everything. But it's literally like I'm doing for my sport, one thing, I'm doing like 6 other things to kind of make myself better at it. So I'm stretching, lifting, making sure I'm getting my rehab in, doing my cardio, nutrition, all that stuff. There's like so much more that goes into it than just getting on stage part. And it's almost like I'm a hybrid athlete in the sense that I am like a figure competitor. I have to be ripped and show that muscle on stage, but I also have to be super athletic.
And you have to, because I saw what you looked like. Last time you were out here, you were 2 weeks?
4 weeks out
4 weeks out.
from the Arnold. Yeah.
And you were-
Wow.
Shredded.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, I mean, you were fucking shredded. I'm
Yeah,
trying not
right.
to. I'm not trying not to.
It's all good. We'll let it rip.
I know. I'm trying not to curse as much as I normally do.
It's okay.
I'm only trying to do it because it
Well,
might
that's a
help the
different
YouTube,
layer of
right?
shredded, right? There's shredded, then there's fucking shredded.
Well, I'm just trying to get more YouTube. I'm trying to build this, but I mean that's the other thing too, because the mental fatigue comes in just from the dieting, and that's not going to be associated with a lot of those other things, because there's a certain point, and we'll talk about this later too, where no matter it's going to be different for you than if Sam was to diet down or if I was to diet back down again. There's a certain body fat where your brain just goes on pause.
Yeah.
But you have that crazy enough, is when your routine needs to start becoming into play. But you're
Yes.
fatigued, you're tired, and you can't focus,
Yep.
which makes that routine far more impressive, especially on stage, right? Especially the way you look on stage. 'Cause
It's unbelievable.
yeah, the things they have to do to look the way they have to look is ridiculous as far as water manipulation, body fat levels, and all that. You have no fat on your feet, right? But you're going to jump off a cage.
Now you have to
right?
land on them.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's a crazy, and I think a lot of strength coaches that will follow us can relate to this way more than they could relate to if you were just a physique competitor.
Right.
Because that's pretty cut and dry. Powerlifter, very cut and dry from programming.
Yeah.
This is a whole,
You're balancing such different demands.
yeah, this is what I love about programming, by
Yeah.
the way, right? Because you got to structure all these different things and get them to work together to
Yeah.
where one's not taking away the recovery from the other one, where a lot of the times the flexibility could help the recovery, you know, from the other, but it's just kind of where you put it. And then the routine aspect, which I have to ask this question because I know I'll forget it later. The Olympia is coming up,
Yep.
right? So that's October
7th.
7th,
Yep.
right? The Arnold is hit or miss, but it's still September 15th, right? Or
25th.
25th.
Yep.
Don't know where it's going to be. Doesn't really matter with this conversation. Do you have to, what do you do routine wise? Do you need 2 routines?
So I am going to do 2 routines.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Holy
no.
shit.
2 routines. I feel like I like to bring something new to each stage, especially these tickets are expensive.
Yeah, I
like the
get that.
fans going, they want to see something new. And right now in like my creative mind, I do feel like I can bring 2 routines.
That doesn't, obviously this is going to increase the training demands.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yep.
Because it's only 3 weeks apart.
Ish. Yeah. Yep.
So are you, and if this is a trade secret, you don't have to answer. Are you going to work both routines now, or just focus entirely on the one and then focus on the other after? Because that's only 3 weeks, and
Yeah.
you're going to be.
So I like to
trained.
be super prepared. So I am starting 2 routines now. Some of the skills will be similar because once you start practicing them more and more, they kind of get like burned into your brain. It's almost like muscle memory. So like certain push-up combinations, I'll keep like the entire year, but I'll stagger them in different routines, you know? So it doesn't look the same, but it's the same skills. The music will be different. Other skills will be different, but I try not to keep the exact format.
Okay. Because I think I've read that, and this isn't to perfect anything, but just to learn something, it needs to be repeated about 21 times.
Right. Yep.
Right. Just my stupid intro that I did for this thing, I probably had to read to myself over the last 2 weeks at least 500 times. Right. And so that's 21 times per routine. Right. Is that a low number, high number? It seems to me like it's probably a low number.
Yeah, I would say low. I mean, once I'm about 10 weeks out from a show, I'm running that routine like every other day. I might not be going full out with the hardcore tumbling, the backflips, all that stuff, but I'm mentally doing them in my head, visualizing it, and then I'll hit like certain sections of the routine just so I'm not gassing myself out.
So you'll segment it.
Yep.
Like the harder parts work at a different time. Same way
Right.
like a football player is going to walk through sometimes
Exactly.
and go hard sometimes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and that idea, I mean, I was having a chat actually with your husband about this a little bit. When it comes to training for your routine, I mean, dealing with athletes, like especially Dave knows this, like if you're going to be training power, it's like, okay, how many foot touches, how many jumps, how many throws are you going to be do? It's like you have to be able to coordinate that with the rest of your training because power development is a different thing entirely.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah. It's at that moment I need to like feel my body. I don't have like a fitness coach. I do it all myself. So I need to be aware of like what's hurting right now. Do I want to go hard? Like how many weeks am I out? Like can we work this in kind of thing? So it's more just like feeling my body, but yeah, I definitely try to get those reps in. I think that's super important, especially when doing new routines.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's so fascinating just from the coaching end of things to just like I could sit here and just be like, what does your training look like? I just want to see the nuts and bolts, right? Like
Yeah.
we were
I
talking about
the
it.
crazy part is I know pro bodybuilders that don't practice their posing routine at all. They
That's
just get up
crazy.
there and do it, right? And And this is like a whole other level. And she's training just as hard and dieting just as hard, but yet she has to put all this extra time in all these other things.
It's fascinating. It just blows my mind. It just absolutely blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So actually, this is another topic that just came up recently. A woman by the name of Angela Borgis becomes the first wellness competitor to qualify for the Olympia. I wanted to get your take on the wellness division because it's a new one. It's a brand new division that they're introducing at the Olympia.
So for Dave and for the viewers that don't know what wellness category is, it's basically like a bikini and figure kind of hybrid division. So the women are going to have rounder glutes, bigger quads, smaller upper body, so their shoulders are going to be softer.
So bikini, what bikini used to be is what this is going to be.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the bikini division now, I feel like the women are very petite. They're very
Almost figure.
well.
No. I take that back.
Yeah, they're
Figure's becoming almost physique. Though.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. How the girls are really hard and dry now. Yeah, you're right.
So it seems they're all moving through this little scale.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And now
Okay.
with women's bodybuilding back, like there's literally a division for everyone. Like
Most definitely.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think wellness is good for the NPC, the IFBB. It's just bringing more women in. More women that come in means better prize money for our division. So I'm grateful for that. So if we want to keep adding divisions, that's great.
How's that? Just through the entries?
Yeah. More eyes on the sport. I feel like as we've gotten more with women's bodybuilding coming back, the owner of the Olympia, Jake Wood, he like really upped the prize money for women's division, which is awesome because the male bodybuilder, like Mr. Olympia, wins like $400,000.
Yeah.
And I think like the first place fitness, which I won this year, was 50. I mean, that's amazing. That's the highest it's ever been. But
It's way higher than it's ever been.
yeah. And, we train really hard and we put a lot of effort into our routines and entertaining the crowd. So I'm glad that he upped it.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody is.
So I know we mentioned this before, but for those who may be just joining us, you train, or John Meadows is your coach,
Yeah.
right? How did you link up with John?
So I've been a fan of John for many years. He did the 2015 Tampa Pro, I believe it was. That was, I placed second at that show in fitness, and I remember meeting him. That was my first time meeting him, and I was just so blown away. Like, he was so nice, and that's really, it's
You don't need to say it. I get it.
our industry. There's a lot of like people, snotty, whatever, just above themselves, and that's not like John. And he was just so nice and really welcoming. And when I finally moved to Seattle, my husband and I got married. One of the big questions Matt asked me is like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to be Miss Fitness Olympia? Like, is this something you want to do? And I was like, yeah, like I want to go hard. So 2018, Matt was like, why don't you reach out to John? Or I'm sorry, 2019. Why don't you reach out to John? I think he'd be like bring you to the next level kind of thing. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Like, let me reach out to John. Let me see what he'll say. So I emailed him, and right away he responded, and he was like, yep, here's a training program. Like, let's get you started. At the time I had a nutrition coach. So I was with her for like another year while John did my training. Never stepped on any toes, super professional. And then I just knew it was time. Like, I needed someone who was more elite, who could bring me into that like crazy conditioning that we all know John can do. And I was just ready to move on. So John, took me under his wing, and we've been like rising ever since.
Let's stay on this topic here, because I had a note of this from going through some of your past podcasts and looking through your history a little bit. So I know I already asked this, but I already forgot. So you turned pro when?
2012.
Okay, 2012. So I'm looking through the history. I'm looking through the placings, right? It's okay, but not okay, right?
Yeah.
And there's a little time where you seemed frustrated, obviously, because you went into a different division,
Yeah.
right? And I think that looking through the history, and I'm speaking for you, but not really speaking for you because I don't know, right? You were kind of at a point where I don't know if I want to do this. You know, there was a lot of questions going through your head.
Yeah.
Something happened in this 2017, 2018 time frame
Yeah.
that maybe it's your husband, maybe it's the conversation that you just had.
Mm-hmm.
Something happened.
Yeah.
So I have this scale that I use: shit, suck, good, great, right?
Yeah.
So shit is the bottom of everything, right?
Yeah.
Anything anybody does is just, shit is actually lower than the bottom, right? Shit is not even, it's like, it's a bad word for what I'm kind of saying because it's just incompetence,
Yeah.
right? So if you want to master, have you ever played tennis? If you want to, yes, are you good? I mean, give me a sport you just don't even care about.
Softball.
You don't care about softball at all, right? So
Yeah.
your level of softball is just shit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's not good nor bad, but you don't know dick about it,
Yep.
right? You don't know anything. And at the same time, you really don't even know enough to be a critic about it, right? So a lot of the critics kind of fall in the shit category because whatever they have to say isn't really worth a shit. Whatever you have to say about softball isn't really worth a shit. You don't even give a shit. You see where the shit comes in here? It's
Yeah.
the shit category because nobody gives a shit. You don't give a shit, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
So going from that, the word I'm looking for would be when you don't care. I can't get the word. It's because when you say I don't care, you do care because you
Yeah.
cared enough to say you don't care. When you're completely void of
Nonchalant.
it, nonchalant, or there's a word for it, it's just not coming to me right now.
It wasn't a priority.
Yeah, it's just there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So to go from there to suck, right?
Yeah.
That's a big jump. It's a huge jump. It's like a whole, it's not a step, it's like a whole staircase.
Yeah.
Right? Because now you're going to join a league or you're going to join a team.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big ass commitment if you think about it. Going from not even caring at all, not even being a priority, just whatever,
Yeah.
to making the decision to actually do it.
Yeah.
You still suck at it, right? Because you've never done it, but you're there,
Yeah.
right? So that's shit to suck. It's like a whole staircase.
Yeah.
Suck to good, man, that's a whole other staircase. Because now if you want to excel at the softball, you need to work your skills, you need to work your skills, you need to work your skills, you need to show up, you need to be there, you need to do everything. And that just gets you good,
Yeah.
right? But that's probably 3 staircases, right? Because that's a ton of work. Think back to some of the sports you excelled in, maybe gymnastics or some of the other cheerleading,
Yeah.
some of those things. That's a lot of work, man. That's the work nobody sees.
Yep.
Those staircases are in the dark, right? Because nobody really sees, nobody pays attention. They just assume it's all getting done.
Yep.
So that's shit, suck, good, right? That's where most people get.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Here's the difference between that. These are all big staircases, big staircases, big staircases. Great is 2 steps, right? But they're 2 steps. You don't see footprints on those steps,
Yeah.
right? Because very few people take them.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to figure out, in 2018, you found those 2 steps.
Yeah.
Why?
Honestly, 100% my husband.
Okay.
Matt is super motivating for me. He really helped me tap into what I'm good at and what I can excel in, and that is fitness. I think when I was at the suck part, I was not making fitness a priority. It was more kind of like a hobby. I'd moved back home to Canada, and I was just
Well,
kind
keep in
of...
mind that you were a pro.
Yeah, I was a pro.
So
Yeah.
you were in the good area. You
Yeah.
did the work. You
Yeah.
were putting in the work.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So that was all there. But
Yeah.
something was missing. It wasn't just him.
Yeah.
Right? Because those 2 steps, you can get there a couple different ways.
That's true.
Right? Somebody who's up there can grab you and pull you up. Somebody who's next to you can kick you in the ass and kick you up there.
Yeah.
Right? There's a couple ways. But nobody gets there unless it's already in their head to begin with.
Yeah.
So the fire's there.
Yeah.
It just needs ignited.
Yeah.
So I think what you're trying to say is he ignited the fire because the confidence,
Definitely.
usually it's a confidence thing,
Yeah.
right? Where if he instills that confidence or brings it out of you that you already had,
That's the biggest thing. Yeah. He definitely boosted my confidence.
and then look what happened,
I know. It's crazy.
right?
And now, like, I'm at this part in my career where, I am the top dog, but there's still these women who have won what I just won. They could be 2-time Miss Fitness Olympia or 4-time. So I don't, for your viewers to kind of get the analogy that I'm talking about is like Brian Carroll when he did that squat of 1,300 pounds, you know, being so fired up. I had that like fire burning inside of me to not only beat those other Miss Olympias, but do it for myself because I knew that like I could do it and it's my time now. I put the work in for the last 4 years, whatever it's been, like hardcore every single day. And, you know, there's also like motivation, like you, Dave, you motivate me, you know, Elite FTS, you guys sponsor me and, you know, have hooked me up with this amazing home gym, especially during the pandemic. Like these other women maybe don't have a home gym like me. So I have that advantage over them that I can't let go to waste. Like I'm busting my ass every day in that gym and making sure I'm putting the work in so that I can be the best.
How do you keep that? Because it's one thing to chase the flame.
Yeah.
It's another thing when you are the flame.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you keep that ignited? Because let's not bullshit anybody. You don't want to train every single day.
Right.
Right. Anybody that says they do is just lying. But you do.
Yes.
Right. That's something I've always said is, you know, you don't have to like what you're doing every single day. You just need to do it. You don't have to, you know, I think that's a misconception.
Yeah.
Where during my final years of competing, I probably hated training more times than I liked training, but you still do it, and you still do it to the level that you're supposed to do it, at the capacity you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
But those days are still there, you know, so is it just on autopilot at this point that it's not even a problem anymore, or do you still have to have some kind of internal dialogue or conversations with Matt?
Right now, like in my off season, I feel good. I want to train. I want to get after it. I have the nutrition that's fueling me and everything. But you know, there are days during my prep when I'm just completely exhausted. Actually, coming out here before the Arnold, when I saw you guys, whatever it was, 6 weeks out or something, I was dying on my diet. Like felt like absolute dog shit. And I remember you saying like, your lower back is so dry, you look so good. And that like burned in my head. I was like, wow, Dave Tate just said that about me. Like I have 6 more weeks, like let's fucking get after it. Let's do it. Like you're going to win this year. And just those little like outside, you know, positive, like positivity for me. It really helped, you know. I feel like it's not just like a win for me. I'm kind of bringing like other people in it with me, and I'm proud to be like a part of it, you know.
Yeah. So you feel it is a responsibility that you have to get your ass in there because you're representing more than yourself.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Which, you know, for those people that aren't in that position, they don't have to be Miss Olympia to do that. They don't have to be all these other people to do that because, you know, your faith can be representing something more than yourself. There's a lot of different situations that people can put. I don't want to say it's stress or it is. It's pressure. It's stress, right? That can be positive. But when you're doing something that's more than just for yourself, comes a higher degree of responsibility.
Totally.
But also can come higher rewards, right? Because when you do a lot for a lot of other people, that also feels good as well. So there's the support that comes with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I saw today in your training, but also in the conversation that we had for some of the videos that have coming out, is you do such a good job controlling the things you can control, right? So often I think a lot of athletes or people start to focus outside of themselves, all the things that are going wrong or all the things that don't feel good or all this or all that. But like even just seeing your training today and everything that you've put up is like you train and you check off those boxes and do what you need to do. And when you're at the level that you're at, it's those little decisions that will either lead to your success or the other way, right? It's in like you're competing against women that do everything right most of the time. It's pretty much a race to see who can do all the right things.
Yep.
As hard as they can.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
I want to jump back here real quick because I missed this little note that I had with the final 2 steps. I think another part of that too was in the earlier years, you know, you still didn't really know what you wanted to do, right? So there's the I can't say it.
Phlebotomy.
Phlebotomy, right?
Yep.
the way that I'm kind of, because that kind of happened right before this 2017, right around the same age or the same range, right?
Yep.
Right around the same time. You covered your backup plan, right? Where
Yeah.
I'm one that I don't agree with the people that are saying, screw the backup plan, go all in. You need to still be all in, but sometimes you can't go all in if you don't have the security
Right.
to be able to go all in,
Yeah.
you know, right? So I think there was a factor of things that kind of came into place that you kind of secured that, like, okay, if this doesn't work out, then I got this.
Yep.
Right. And you had a different career course, I believe, when we were speaking last time, which you pivoted off of once you came to the States.
Yep.
I can understand why now. Right.
Big time.
Yeah, I can see that. So those, basically you're kind of checking those boxes where a lot of people in strength sports, they don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, they just go all in, and that works. I'm not going to say it doesn't work. We all know it works. We all know people that have done it, and it works.
Yeah.
But at some point in time, it's going to rein its head, right? And so let's say it's going to rein its head after they've won several pro shows, or, you know, strength sports doesn't make a lot of money, right? I can't say play in the NFL because that's completely false, right? Because there is that. But then when that reins its head, then now that's a stressor you have to deal with. You know, that's going to produce cortisol, which is going to make it harder to recover from your training, which is all this other stuff. But just to alleviate that one little factor, right?
Yep.
And, you know, going from, you know, not knowing what type of relationship you're in, or I don't know, maybe a bad relationship or whatever,
Sure.
to a good
Yep.
relationship, you got to look at the boxes that were checked, right?
Totally.
That
Yeah.
you were doing. So it's like, okay, this is checked, this is checked, this is checked. And now somebody says, are you really want to do this or you don't? You need to decide.
Yep.
It's easier when you think, okay, covered, let's fucking do this.
Yep.
And I think that strength athletes need to learn from that,
Yeah.
because even if it means they might have to pause for a couple years to be able to feel a little bit. Would you agree with what I'm saying?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're like nailing it. You're really nailing it.
I have a gift for stalking people.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, like, going all in. I think a lot of people don't really go all in, and they use the excuses of, like, oh, this is hard, or this is challenging, or it's the money, it's the this, it's the that, as a safety net from having to rely solely on their own actions and what they do, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a position where it's like, okay, this is covered, that's covered, we're safe, we can handle our finances, we can do this, we can do that. It's like, now it's all on you.
Yeah.
And, like, win or lose, it's based on your decision, based on what your actions are.
Totally.
And I think that scares a lot of people to get into that position where it's solely based on their actions and they control that going forward, right?
It's not, doesn't have to be. Now, I'm just speaking strength sports again, because we're talking a different beast, right? And this falls into strength sports because there's not a lot of money,
Right.
right? So the security is a different level of security, right? The security is just, maybe it's just being able to pay your rent for the 6 months that you're going to be in prep, and being able to cover the food and all the other kind of stuff. That can be enough, right? So it's different. Where I've known people that have lived in their cars and, you know, all
Right.
this kind of stuff. And how do you prep for a show? How do you prep for a powerlifting meet living out of your car? I know people that have done it, and then they'll brag about it. And that's great, but that's not really, you could have done better
Right.
had you just covered those bases for whatever it's going to be. So I don't want people to be under the false impression that if that's what they really want to do, because if it's what they really, fact of the matter, going all in, if it's what you really want to do, you're going to find a way to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you'll lose a little bit of track from that, right? So even without this, you know, that kick in the ass from him probably still would have been enough.
Yeah.
This just is a piece of the puzzle that for a lot of people in strength sports especially, I see. And the issue with that is a lot of these sports take a long time to mature. You know, you were fortunate because a year you turned pro, but it's a different sport. So,
Yeah.
and that's not exactly true either. Because how many years before that were you doing those skill sets?
Right.
In
Like
other
decades,
sports?
yeah.
Decades,
Yeah.
right? So it's not really a year.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You could have been competing, you just didn't know about it.
Yep.
You know, so it's that thing. But what happens when it's a sport that takes decades to mature in, say they're introduced to it when they're 20 and they're all in and they don't give a fuck about the backup plan or anything else, they wake up at 40 and like, oh shit, you know,
Yeah.
now what? You know, sell an ebook, you know, it's
Yeah, right.
And you know,
Back to those booty programs.
Yep.
yeah, I get it, but you know, we all see a lot of that.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it would be a disservice to not speak about it, you know, up front, honestly, so those people can see you can do this. and you can do it in a way that you're not going to wake up 20 years later, wondering how you're going to pay your rent. Because it's a shitty, I don't buy that excuse, when they're 40 years old and like, well, I did all this. That's great. I'm glad you went all out, but you didn't really go all into me. Because if you did, you would have covered your bases to make sure you could have done this at the highest level.
Yeah.
Right.
So you weren't really all in. You were fucking lazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that level of, because, I mean, Missy, you can talk about how much effort it takes, not even just in the training, but like the prep, making sure that your sleep is there. Like you have to worry about, it's all of these things on a daily basis you need to be checking off. And I think there's a reason that you're the best in the world, right?
Yeah.
Like that's part of that system that you have, is like, I need to be able to do these things day in, day out, no questions asked.
Yeah. And, it is really hard, but it's really easy when your spouse, your significant other supports you in it. And I think that's the biggest thing with people in like the industry today, maybe why they're not going all in, is because they may have like a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, spouse that isn't supportive of them. And I am super blessed that mine supports me. And, he's not sitting there eating Burger King and shit. Like eats, like a bodybuilder. It's super easy for me. We don't have crap in the house. If we have to go on like a family vacation, like people like in my life are super supportive. They don't, they encourage me to eat what I need to eat. Like same with Matt. He, brings his meals and stuff. Like I think that's really important, having that like support from your people.
It's huge.
Keep going.
But you're leaving, I'm not a huge super believer in the law of attraction, but you're leaving out the other half here, right? You found him.
Yeah.
He found you, but you see what I'm saying? That's a mutual thing. So
yes,
how do I say this without sounding like an idiot? You kind of knew what you were looking for. You knew what
Right.
you needed to complement.
Yes.
And you weren't settling on anything other than that, right? And so that comes in there too. So we can also change the conversation and say how many people that settled for people that they probably shouldn't have settled for.
Yeah.
If that was their true goal, was that, right? So there's two sides, where I know he's sitting over there, but he's still only half the half the equation. A pivotal one, a big one, right?
Big one, yeah.
But there's a lot of credit to be given for you as well. Because I'm sure check your Instagram DMs, right? I'm sure you can get a whole lot of other people other than him.
Yeah, and I think you just need to touch on the fact that the stress level of being in a relationship that's not where you want it to be is debilitating.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's debilitating anyhow.
Right.
At times, right?
Yeah. Well.
Hey, you hear that?
Yeah. Shut up, Matt.
Wait, no. I don't mean that. I mean, other relationships
I was just joking.
could have been debilitating. But yeah, I that's one good thing about Matt. When we met each other, he was hardcore into powerlifting and bodybuilding. It wasn't something that like I had to bring to him. We just kind of like meshed like that. So.
But you see that happen a lot though, right? So two people will get together, they're both hardcore in it, but one of them kind of fades out.
Yes.
And the other one picks up steam and then it just crumbles.
Yep.
So I wouldn't say that's really the prerequisite. I think it's more the prerequisite of wanting to support you for whatever you want to do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I understand what you're saying, but it can also be misleading because some people could go out and actively just look for that.
That's true.
Right. And then what they find is an egocentric person that only cares about them, but doesn't care about your goals, and building both, because I'm sure you're just as supportive, if not more so, to his goals.
For sure.
So it's complementary.
Yeah.
He's not just a bag carrier.
No, not at all.
Meal prep guy.
Yeah.
We actually had a few super chats come in, I think, that are very pertinent. We had kind of mentioned how during training, during your prep, there could be some setbacks. There are going to be things you have to deal with. We have a question here from Vedrana that wants to know about some of your injuries and your setbacks during training that have really kind of pushed you to your limit.
Yeah. So this Olympia prep, last time I was here, I don't think I told you, Dave, but I had like 2 cortisone injections in my left tricep, elbow tendonitis, which is
Yeah.
super common. But
Yeah, people are really good about not telling me about injuries.
Yeah, sorry about that.
uh-oh.
That's all right.
Yeah, I try not to just
I
talk.
waddled in here on one meniscus. That was it.
Oh gosh. So yeah, the elbow tendonitis. I had bicep tendonitis in my right arm, which they had to go through my rear delt to inject, which sucked before the Olympia. That is a painful shot. But this isn't like a plug for your bars or anything, but I'm really grateful to have, the neutral grip bars in my home gym, because that alleviated all the pressure I was feeling in my, chest and shoulders where I was getting that pain. And then also the shoulder saver bar. Like, I didn't bench before coming here, and now I bench like every week with my program, and I use that bar or the pad with the bar.
What do you think lit this up? Because it's basically it's the same thing on both sides, just in a different area. So it's bicep tendonitis. So
Yeah.
What do you think created this situation?
Well, I wasn't tucking my elbows when I was pressing. I was leaving them out. And I also think with my like exploding push-ups that I was doing, it was a lot of like on the shoulder and pec area. So yeah, that kind of really irritated it. And the shots worked well, obviously. But then afterwards, after literally the day after the Olympia, I started getting pain everywhere. The adrenaline was off. I had just won, and I took 2 weeks off from the gym because I just couldn't, I had so much pain everywhere.
Yeah, well, the shots are, it's temporary.
Yes.
It's a Band-Aid, so you
Yeah.
still have to let it rest at some point in time.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it was more created from some overuse,
Definitely.
injury. Obviously, all injuries are going to be created from some form of overuse, but
Yeah.
any overuse that you kind of learn from, that because this off season, you've been super healthy, right?
Yeah.
So what did you learn from that? Dieting changes things, so this is a
That's
weird
true.
conversation. So what did you learn from that you've been able to apply to this off season to not have that inflammation fire up?
So right now, John has me doing it's a 6-week block, and we're doing 3 days of back per week, so pulling. There's no direct bicep movements. It's a lot of just neutral grip, rows, that type of stuff, rear delts, just to kind of blow up my back. And that's what I did to cause the elbow and bicep
gotcha.
injuries. But it comes with the territory.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Gotta grow the back somehow. So
Yeah, part of me sitting here thinking, at your level, you've
Yeah.
only really dealt with.
Yeah.
Well, let me back up. That prep, you only had to deal with bicep tendonitis, right? I mean, in your sport, injuries are common.
totally.
So ankles. So what about some of the other injuries that you've had to deal with that are more significant?
Knock on wood, it's only been those, and it was just within the last year. But so after the Olympia, I went and saw an orthopedic surgeon, and he was like, okay, we're going to do surgery on your elbow. We're going to get this fixed and do some scraping, get the cartilage out of there. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So I called John, and I'm like, hey, I'm going in for surgery tomorrow. We're going to get the elbow figured out. And he's like, whoa, no, don't do that. Let me hook you up with Dr. Serrano. So I get on a FaceTime call with Dr. Serrano, and he literally tells me, grab your Elite FTS lacrosse ball, put it in your back, and roll on your rear delt. And I'm not kidding, within 2 weeks, my elbow was totally fine after the injections and everything. So it wasn't really my elbow, it was something in my back
Yeah.
or Terry's, wherever.
Yeah. So you
So-
now have a relationship with Erica, I hope?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
okay.
text back and forth and
Yes,
everything.
yes.
And
Because your ortho is probably not somebody you need to see again.
no.
You need to find a different one.
Yeah. So he's cut.
Yes, exactly. Because I mean let's just keep going. I don't want to rant about this. We'll just keep going.
I don't know. There's a part of me that wants to hear where this rant was going.
No.
The yeah, but I think that's also an important lesson for people too. It's okay, your elbow hurts, but what about north and south of your elbow?
Right. Where where is
Mm-hmm.
it leading? Yeah.
Especially for knees as well. Everybody's like, oh, my knee hurts. It's like, all right, well, let's take a look at the hip or take a look at everything. It's a cool that you had gotten that sort of benefit from there.
Yep.
We had a question come in from Paul here. Actually, to bring it back to Matt, do you train with Matt?
Yeah, we train together.
How does that go?
It's great. We push each other, spot each other. As I get closer to a prep, though, we kind of go our separate ways, just because scheduling. He works really early in the morning. We're West Coast time, so the stock market opens 6 a.m. East Coast time. So he's up like 3 a.m. getting his day going, getting ready, and during that time, I need to make sure I'm getting enough sleep. So I'll sleep till like 6, and then the diet's starting to like wake me up. Like, okay, dude, you got to get your cardio in and eat. So yeah, we're on a little different schedule during prep.
Awesome. Very nice.
Let's go back to the adversity thing, right? Because I like the adversity stuff. So let's look at the Olympia last year. There's some adverse conditions that transpired there, right?
Oh, yes.
So first off when was it first scheduled? For what? How many times did the date change?
Gosh, I think like 4 times.
Okay.
So it was scheduled for September in Las Vegas, Planet Hollywood. And then they juggled the date around a couple times, and then eventually it went to Orlando at the Orange County Convention Center.
And that just happened after you came out. So that was like 8 weeks out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like October 10th, I think they had it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you had a prop.
I had a
You had a
prop.
cage.
A cage, yeah.
So what happened there?
6-foot cage. So we had rented a U-Haul truck to actually drive the cage to Las Vegas. That was the plan. We were going to pack it, do everything we needed, just drive down. Because I think it was like a 16-hour drive. Wasn't too bad. So then they changed it. So then I started thinking, okay, like, how are we going to get this cage there? It's about 200 pounds, whatever, when it's all put together. So we decided we would freight it to Orlando. So I needed to make sure it got there in time. Didn't have much help from the Olympia, which was fine. I kind of knew that would happen. So we ended up freighting the cage to the hotel. It showed up broken, but I didn't know it was broken. So again, no help from the Olympia. Matt and I had to dolly this cage through like 4 escalators, like up and down walkways, no help from anyone. We get it backstage and we're banging it together because it wasn't like nailed or anything. It was all wood dowels. So we put it all together, and then the very back piece is completely snapped in half. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, Matt, what the hell are we going to do? He's like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Like, we'll figure it out. And I'm freaking out because I literally have to jump off this cage in front of thousands of people in like an hour. Still haven't warmed up yet. So Matt, like, kind of walks around the stage, and he ends up finding this roll of black duct tape. Like, what are the odds, like, of him finding this? So he found it. He ended up just wrapping the whole thing around the cage, and thankfully it didn't break. I was able to jump off of it, and yeah.
All right, so there's that. Then when you were out here, right, I remember us talking about it being hard for you to find some place to practice.
Oh, yes.
The routine.
Yeah.
So there was that. So you had to bounce that around. I saw one video of you doing it basically kind of like, it looked like off your roof, but it was in your driveway, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I'm just grabbing the low-hanging fruit here, right?
Yeah.
That's 7 things that are adverse conditions that most people would be like, holy shit, right? And what happened again at the show?
First place.
You won, right? So, and when they announced, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So when they announced you as second. Right? So I'll put that as a half, right? Because they did correct fast, right?
Yeah.
It could have been way worse where you found out a week later, but that's the mark of a true professional, is kind of where I'm getting with this. Like, a lot of people will spend all their time looking for excuses and validations on why everything goes wrong. Right? You're stressed, you're pissed, you're upset, right? But at no time did you ever think, I'm not going to win this thing.
Right.
Let's figure this out so I can get on stage and do what I'm here to do.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
That's professionalism, right? That's the
absolutely.
difference, right? That goes back to those 2 steps.
Yeah.
But with those 2 steps, that's those 3 staircases you had to get from, to get to those 2 steps.
Yeah.
That's what's learned during those those times because you got to deal with that crap.
Love it. Yeah.
And all I'm talking about here, the low, there's way more than this. If I sat here and talked, we could probably come up with 50 things, you know, from not having the right chicken at the store because the store is closed. How do you get your food because all the markets closed because of COVID?
Right.
You see, this just more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
And this isn't just you. Everybody that competed in that show
Totally.
had to deal with these adverse conditions.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, and I don't follow it that close,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen anybody really bitch about it. Right.
Yeah.
Now they bitch about a lot of other things,
Yep.
you know, placing and all this other crap.
Yeah.
And they'll bitch about, you know, how it was kind of a pain in the ass, but every one of them that got up on the stage they got up on the stage and did what they had to do, having to deal with all the same conditions.
Yeah.
It really kind of changes your perspective now, at least it does mine, when I hear people complain about some things that can go wrong before a meet or a show. And it's like, let's just sit here and think about what all these competitors had to deal with. And
Yeah.
I just gave some here. I mean, your freaking cage that you have to, it's your whole intro.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can't not have
You
that.
know,
Yeah.
I never really followed the show, but I saw that. I never followed that aspect of the sport.
Yep.
But I followed yours.
Yeah.
I watched yours. So with the little amount of knowledge I know on that set the stage for your entire routine.
Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, that you hit that, bam, you smack the floor, you come up, you're fired up, your confidence is through the roof.
Yeah.
Anybody sitting there, anybody watching this knew right then, she just won.
Yeah, you win.
You
win.
know, as long as you don't fuck up the next 60 seconds, she just won.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in anybody's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that broke.
Yeah.
And you knew just as well that was a strong intro,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That was going to destroy anybody else's
Yeah.
intro. So,
So one of the biggest things with this Olympia, just kind of to give you like a little analogy here, is like I had the opportunity to go against 2, almost 3 of the best women in the fitness industry ever. So that's like Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, all being on stage.
yes.
And the open bodybuilders of today being able to compete against them. That's what my feeling was, because I knew these women were going to come in hard. They were going to come in with great routines, and I needed to beat them this year. And I was ready for it. Like I knew I could do it. It was my time. And I believe that in my heart that I was going to beat them this year, and I put the work in, and just it was a really, really amazing experience. And I think that I might be the only person to ever be able to say that I was able to go against like the greats.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm proud of that.
As an outsider, I know I'm saying I never watched the fitness before, I have, but not actively, right?
Yeah.
And so as an outsider watching this, I've seen enough bodybuilding shows and figure I get that. The physique round, whatever they call that round,
Yeah.
they were not going to be. You were freaking shredded beyond belief.
Thank you.
Now, I'm not a judge either. Keep that in mind. But that was easily
Yeah.
won. I mean, there's no. But I will say, because Oksana went before you, I saw her routine and I thought, oh, fuck. Because keep in mind, all I saw was you jumping off a cage in a driveway.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, fuck.
Well, Oksana, she won 4.
Yeah.
She did. Yeah.
I'm like,
Yep.
this was a strong routine. Then I'm like, okay, I'm like on my phone, like, how do they judge these things? Like, how much goes here? How much goes here?
Right.
Yeah.
Because this was really good. And then after that, I'm like, I still was like, ooh, it's going to be close, but that I didn't know, right? And it
Yeah.
ended up being a little bit greater margin when I saw the scorecards, and I think what people think it is, right?
Yeah.
The discrepancy from what I saw really wasn't between first and second. It was her in third, right?
Right. Yeah. Second and third.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Which is really misleading the way that they announced this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very confusing at the time, but yeah, I'm glad they figured it out right off the jump. So
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Your emotions had to be like, what?
Yeah, it must have been a roller coaster.
Unless you,
Yeah.
let me tell you, unless you thought something was wrong. Because
well,
it seemed kind of weird.
yeah, I actually thought they were gonna take back second from me and give it to Whitney and give Oksana third, and because I knew,
Okay.
I kind of knew I won. Like
Yeah.
I knew in my heart, especially when I walked off stage. JM, he pulled me aside and he was like, Missy, I've been watching fitness for the last 15, 20 years, whatever, and that was the best routine I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's
And for
pretty
him to
much-
say
yeah,
that, like, yeah,
Yeah, that pretty much tells you. He's what he runs the
Yeah.
NPC or is it NPC or IFBB? IFBB?
Uh,
No,
NPC,
NPC, yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like we had talked about during some of the videos that we shot, is that energy that you had, like watching that video, it was like this was a different, just like a different level, right? And to see you, just to be able to kind of flip that switch, like David said, like watching you jump off that cage, it was like, oh, okay, like this is something different.
Yeah.
Right?
Lot of practice, a lot of driveway jump offs and
Well, that's why I brought that up early is, how many reps does it take to be able to perfect these routines? But
yeah.
let's jump back a little bit for the people that have been listening for a long time, because what's the history before you getting into this? Where I know some was cheerleading, but is there a gymnastics background? Where did you develop the skill sets for the routine?
Yeah, so when I was 6, my parents put me in gymnastics, and I did that till I was around 13. And then from there, I went on to cheerleading. So that's how I have like the muscle memory for the backflips and the push-ups. But I have to contribute like the muscle, like the bodybuilding style training for my big tumbling lines that I do, the big flips, because when I was young in cheerleading and gymnastics, like I couldn't do that stuff. I had the confidence to do it, but I just couldn't execute it because I wasn't strong enough. I didn't have the power in my legs that I do now.
Okay, so what motivated you to even do the first show?
Well,
I mean, you're not like walking down the street and it's like, hey, there's a fitness show. I'm going to jump in it.
yeah. Well, I saw Adele Garcia, who was 8-time Ms.Fitness Olympia. She was actually supposed to come back this year, but she had bicep tendonitis, so she didn't make her return, which I would have liked to stand next to her because her coach kind of talked some shit on a podcast. That kind of fired me up. But so, yeah, I saw a video of her when I was younger, and I was like, wow, like I can do this. If I like put my mind to it, I could do a fitness routine. So that's kind of how it got started.
Okay. And then what about the weight training aspect? Was that just part of it since the cheerleading, or how did you get introduced to that?
Well, as a kid, growing up, we watched a lot of WWE now.
Yeah.
So I had, you're looking at like Triple H and like Hulk Hogan back in the day, and they're all just like muscled up freaks. And I had an older brother who was big into bodybuilding at the time, and my dad always lifted weights. He had like the bench in the garage with the cement weight in the like little plastic weight. So I guess like bodybuilding was kind of always part of my life. It was just something I always kind of did. But
I heard in the podcast I was listening to yesterday, I don't know who it was with. You just did it though recently. It was maybe a week ago.
Michael,
Yes.
this is bodybuilding. Yeah.
Yes. You made a statement in there that was profound. It kind of hit me a little bit that that most of the people that are sitting in the auditorium are there to see, the mass monsters, the pro bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And you feel you feel you need to play into their crowd with your routine.
Yeah.
So first off, that's profound observation that most people wouldn't even think about. And it's super important.
Yeah.
Right? Because no, they're probably not there. There's a small group that's there for that. But if you can get them all behind you, that's going to help, right? It's going to help for a lot of things.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Because obviously you did it.
Yeah.
Right? So how did you do that? What do you incorporate in the routine to be able to play into that?
So it's definitely my music selection, and I try to hit like a lot of like bodybuilding poses in my routine, whether it's like a front double bicep or, just like a muscle pose, something like that, to get them like fired up. And I try to embrace like that WWE like attitude kind of on stage, because it does get people entertained.
Yes.
If I can get them engaged at the jump, they usually will watch. But as for like more eyes like on my division, like fitness, I honestly believe it was like coming here to see you, Dave, like last year, getting power lifter, bodybuilder, that type of people to watch me and follow my journey. My YouTube has gone up, my Instagram has gone up, and I gotta thank you guys, like
Well,
you, John.
it's that too, but keep in mind what you put together with the routine, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to throw business stuff out. This is like, it's basic marketing, right?
Yeah.
You can have a product, you have the greatest product, and you can go try to sell it. It can be a great, like, perfect product. You can go try to sell it, but if you don't have the buyers first, there's no point in having the product.
Yeah.
You got to find the buyers first.
Yes.
And then what do the buyers want?
Right.
Right. So you're looking at the audience as those buyers without even knowing it. And then what do they want? And then you put it in your routine. That's basic sales.
Yeah.
That's a sales thing that most people miss, right? So that's why I'm saying it's a very profound thing to hear and see from this industry, because typically that's not what it is. Typically it's, here's my package, I'm going to present the best package, here's my product, I'm going to present the best product, and fucking buy it if you want.
Yeah.
Right? So that's still a huge part. That I'm not discounting that, right?
Yeah.
But there's this other part.
It's market research.
Which is this market research part,
Totally.
right? Which is going to bring more people to you, more eyes to you, more people to your YouTube, more people that you're going to be able to influence, maybe not to do the sport, but just general health and so forth. That it was really, really cool to hear that, because it's another rare attribute. You got a lot of rare attributes, which is probably why you're
Number one.
There you go. Yeah, and just for me personally, like getting to know you and getting to see what you've done is, I mean, obviously the world of bodybuilding is so big, but from a coaching perspective, it still boils down to the athleticism, and the whole thing, start to finish, is so impressive. And so just people need to understand how difficult any one of those things are, and how you can just put them all together into one day and be the best you can at that moment in time, right? It's like peaking, right? Like a lot of people will peak too early or peak too late, or they show up, like we were talking about, someone shows up to the show flat, right?
Yep.
It's like they looked great 3 days ago, but when it comes time to, show up, like they just don't show up with the best package, right? And it's very cool to see all of those from a programming perspective, is like the power, the athleticism, the diet, the nutrition, like all of you have to peak so many different attributes.
Totally.
And I hope the people watching this can really appreciate, just from that perspective, from the athletic development perspective, all the coaches out here listening and watching, it's like, that's so cool. And now it's just, you have one of the biggest fans here, right? Like I'm just
Thank you.
one of the biggest fans.
Let's bring this down to, basic level to most people that are probably listening to this, that, they don't want to compete, right? Most people that are going to listen to the podcast and watch the YouTube, they don't want to take it to that level,
Sure.
right? But they do want to become better at what they're doing. So from a nutritional standpoint, a training standpoint, a mental standpoint, what would be some advice that you would give, not to complete beginners, but intermediates, just to be able to dial things up a little bit more?
I think you got to stay on track, and if it's something you truly want to do, you just got to go for it. So if it is the nutrition part, like you can't slack off and just go eat a McDonald's double cheeseburger. Like you got to stay on track, because you got to fuel your body for the next workout. And then with that workout, you got to go home and go to bed early, or not early, but you need to go to bed at a right time to recover, so you can hit it hard again the next day. So it's just being accountable to yourself if it's something that you truly want to do, and don't half-ass it. If you want to do it, do it. Do it because you want to, not because someone else is pushing you to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a champion. That's a champion mindset, right? It is to be able to, like we had talked about before, and kind of bring us full circle, is controlling those controllables.
Yeah.
It's like, no one's going to make you diet. No one's going to make you go to bed at the right time. No one's going to make you watch how much water you're drinking, or, just kind of, you have to be in that driver's seat.
Yeah.
And to see that is something that's very important, that a lot of people, I think, need to hear.
Yeah. When we were getting it after, we were getting after it on the hack squat over there, and when I get to a place in my mind where I want to stop because it hurts, I start thinking of, who's my competition this year? who do I want to fucking beat? And I start thinking their names. And sometimes when Matt and I are training, I will shout them out. Like, I will shout their names out. I'm not going to say who they are right now, but I will shout their names out because it motivates me.
Even if you did, that's a form of respect, right?
Yes.
Because by doing that is also kind of saying that if you don't do what you're supposed to do and they do what they're supposed to do, they will win.
Heels.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fact, right?
Yeah.
That you're not shouting out the people that you're not worried about.
Right.
So that's an ultimate form of respect.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like when I get there, when I get to that like part of my body and mentally, when I'm feeling like that, I know they're not working as hard as me. So it feels good to know that I can push like that. I can tap into this like crazy part of my body that most people can't get there. So
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the saying of win the day, which I kind of think is a stupid saying because you got to win many days. You got to win the week. But, you win that session.
Yes, totally.
You know what I'm saying? So you win that session, then you put that together where you win that meal. Then you put that together. But with the takeaways for the people listening is a lot of these things are they seem daunting, right? You need to train hard. You need to train to the limit. That's true, and they are daunting. But here's some things that aren't daunting that she said. You can get your rest.
Yeah.
It's not this big discipline sacrifice type thing to get your rest. You just turn the fucking TV off, get off the phone, and get the adequate rest. And you'd be surprised at how many people don't do that. You know, I don't want to use the word can't do that, right? Because they can. Everybody can. They just don't. Yeah. If they did that and then just fueled half the time, if they just fueled themselves correctly half the time, or just set that aside for a minute, just hydrated, got their rest and actually hydrated like they should. We're talking intermediates here. Just did those two things. Their progress is going to go through the roof. Their injuries are going to go down. Their strength is going to go up. Are they going to get leaner? It's a different conversation. Probably not, but maybe, right? Because if they're not getting the adequate fluids to transport any nutrients, right? The problem is with a lot of people is they start stacking all those things. It's like, well, there's no way I can get the sleep. There's no way I can get 5 meals a day. There's no way I can do this. There's no way I can do this. It's like, break it down. Stop telling me what you can't do, because I know damn well you can get to bed on time.
Right. And it just needs to be stated that you can get better. You don't have to be perfect, right, when you make those decisions, right? Like, you didn't get to this level by just going from 0 to 100, right? You weren't just like all of a sudden, yep, okay, now we're doing this thing. It's like there's this build up over time. It's like you kind of perfect the process for you and what works for you. And I imagine that there would be a lot of people here that don't even focus in on those low-hanging fruit, right? If I asked the chat right now, like, who here is sitting next to a bottle of water? Everybody would be like, oh, shit, right? Like, they just, it's those little things, and it's those little habits that become those rituals that lead to more success over time.
Yeah.
Well, I think, too, from the arena that we kind of all represent, so the strength sports, again, figure, fitness, figure, all those physique fits to me in strength sports. A lot of people it doesn't, which I don't understand why, because they got to still train the same way. Is people love to see the stories, they love to see the videos, they love to see the competitions, they love to see all that, even if they know they're never going to do that. But the stories that they usually hear are the last 6 weeks, the elbow tendonitis, the cage and the competition getting all screwed up, and the, not being able to, your feet hurt because there's no fat on the bottom of your feet, or you're peaking for a powerlifting meet and everything just fucking hurts so bad. You just want to get it to them. So they see all those things, but they don't realize they never have to venture into that territory. Right. So that makes everything it still can be hard if you want to push it hard. It can still be really hard. But one of the first things I told Justin when I was dieting down with him, because that wasn't about a show, it was just more about, can I do this and how far can I take it? The first thing I said is, whatever we're going to do, I'm not doing the last 6 weeks, right? I know the last 6 weeks of this shit. I did it in powerlifting. I competed in bodybuilding many, many years ago. I don't first off, it's dangerous, right? So that's a whole other conversation, but there's a risk benefit, and that's associated typically with everything that happens in the last, and we're not talking drugs, chemicals, and all that. I'm just talking the low body fat, the training, the dehydration potential, all these things, everything happens then. You know, if they're drug-free, not drug-free, it's the same thing. It still was freaking hard, right? But when you take that part, at least for me, when I took that part off the table, I don't have to deal with that hell.
Yeah.
This hell's manageable.
Yeah, you can pick your hell.
You can pick it. Exactly.
Yeah.
You can pick how deep you want to go.
Yeah.
And some of it may just be, I call it the starting gate, you know, for powerlifting or for bodybuilding. There's a certain shape you need to be in for powerlifting, say 12 weeks out. Maybe bodybuilding, it's 10 weeks out. You need to be at a certain look at that point. So you spend the off season just making sure you're at that point. Maybe it's backing off, maybe it's pushing, but it's a balancing act, right? You got to be, because at that point you have to be at said point. For a lot of people listening to this, maybe it's just getting to that point, right? If actually for most it probably is. That's doable by anybody, right? Anybody.
Yeah.
And it's nothing simple because there's a commitment,
Right.
but it's definitely doable. Everybody.
Yeah.
And it's that starting gate that people, I don't know, I just feel like there is a lot of people that, you know, feign this commitment, right? We kind of mentioned this earlier, like to the process and whatnot. And it's like, listen, you haven't even gotten to the starting gate yet, right? You haven't even given yourself that chance to
I
grow.
get, but many people, that is their reward though.
Right.
They're just not perceiving it that way. They're not going to be competitors, so change the perspective of what the outcome is.
Right.
Imagine how good a shape they would be in if they just wanted to get to the starting gate of where she needs to be before she starts prep.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You're 2 weeks away from it right now, right?
Yeah.
You're a couple weeks into prep.
Yep.
Everything they see in the video that comes out with John probably next week, that's your starting gate.
Yeah.
Right? Now, tell me how easy that's going to be. Now, granted, she's got, years and years of getting there.
Right.
I'm just talking body fat percentage, that type of stuff. That's doable by anybody.
Totally.
Now, where she goes from here, no.
Uh-uh.
No.
Nope.
That's not. That's a different level, man. That's a different level. That's a different territory.
Yeah.
That's for, and that's not a bad thing. But I think people don't prioritize their end, right? Because that end really should end up being, and that starting gate for her, that's not this right here, what she looks like. This is not what she looked like 8 weeks ago. I'm not saying you were a big balloon either, but there's
it's
work
true.
that goes into getting there.
Totally.
Right. So that doesn't mean that's where it is all the time, but it's definitely not show ready. I hope. Am I making this kind of clear?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
absolutely. 100%. And just from seeing how you and John were training today, and Dave, I would love to hear your insight on this in terms of the spectrum of John's training styles and training volume. He kind of brought it today. Now, more so than I think we've seen.
That was hard.
Yeah. It wasn't like...
It could have been harder, but it was hard. It was hard.
I saw you creeping in trying to make it harder for everybody.
It could have been hard. I mean, it was where she needs to be right now.
Yeah.
And will it get harder moving forward? Maybe a little bit, but you got to keep in mind, you start becoming leaner, you start becoming more dehydrated. Those risk things are going to start to change a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. So 4 weeks, that's going to be brutal. Right.
Yes.
Her training 4 weeks from now is going to be brutal. And then maybe it might start to taper a little bit, but not that much. Just exercise selection will change. The risk assessment, what's going to change.
Yeah.
But it's still going to get hard. The other part, it's going to be harder for other reasons, like not having energy and having to do all the other stuff.
Definitely. And the cardios, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, it's a big one.
So we actually had a few questions come in. One of them came in from YouTube. Training with John, what is one of the biggest lessons you've learned about yourself? Because John has a tendency of putting you in positions where you start to have those conversations with yourself.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, just kind of checking in.
Yeah. I think it's being able to like push myself and get to that like dark place that you just gotta keep going. And once you're there and you're doing it, and there's like this feeling. There's like this empowerment feeling that like, shit, I can do anything. Like if I can do that, I can do anything.
It's a different level. It's like when you came to the Train Your Ass Off, right? So they come to train with John. Keep in mind, she's not training with John every day,
Right.
right? And she's not going to let him down, right? She's not going to miss a rep in front of. It's just they're not going to do that,
Yeah.
right? So then he can push her to a level she may not push herself at typically, but then when she goes home, that whole pendulum is shifted a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, now wait a minute, I can do better than this. I just did.
Yeah.
Right? And then each time she'll come, it gets bumped a little bit more.
Yes.
Now, if it's pre-contest, it's a different. Last time you were out here wasn't the same as what that was.
Yeah.
Right? But next off season you come out, it's going to be more brutal than that.
Yeah.
Right? So that just keeps bumping that up. So it does change that perspective.
Now we got a couple questions more.
Well, hold on a minute because I forgot.
Oh,
This
yeah,
is a
jump right
good
in.
story, right?
Yeah, let's hear it.
The RPE or the reps in reserve, right? So, God, what's this? It wasn't James. What's the other guy's name?
Oh, Brett.
Brett, that was out
Yeah,
here, right? Okay, he was doing the hack squats.
Yes.
Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He basically went to failure, and nobody here would say that wasn't. Was it that one or was it the belt
it
squat?
was belt
It was
squat.
the
Belt
belt
squat.
squat,
Belt
right?
squat, yeah.
Yeah. So he nobody here would say he didn't go to failure, right? He went to failure, boom, sat right back on the box. So then it was like, what the fuck? Motherfucker. Then we're motherfucking him and all this other kind of stuff. He does 7 more reps, right? How's
Where'd that
work?
come from?
Well, no, but how's that work on the RPE scale? How's that work on a reps and reserve scale? If he already failed and he did 7 more reps, not after a rest pause, it was a mental correction. Move your ass and go.
Yeah.
Right. This is where I have problems with the RPEs, the reps and reserve, and all that other stuff because nobody takes into account the mental fortitude. Right. He could have. I can sit there and say what I saw him do, while it was a painful, terrible set to be able to watch. He still had 3 more in him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can say he was 3 reps shy of failure. Yeah, it was 7 reps past
Failure.
what he did.
Right.
So how exactly is that the reps in reserve?
Right. No,
Right. Now I'm not
absolutely.
criticizing it. I'm just saying that when people use those scales and to try to attach it to everybody, it's a mistake. These have to be specific scales to specific people. Right. Now, granted, mentally his CNS is going to be shot from that. Right. So yes, that was more than it needs to be.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't like the absolutes when it comes to those scales. They're good guidelines and stuff like that. But if you can take somebody that says, yeah, I always train to failure, and then get them in front of somebody else, and then, motherfuck them 7 more reps, then are they really training to failure? And if they always train that way with that same mental attitude, they're going to get hurt.
Yes.
So you see what I'm saying? Is
Yeah.
the only way that's navigated is by specifically focusing on the effort each individual can put in, and then backing it up or pushing it from there, which is what your husband does. It's what Matt does for you.
Yep.
Right. That's what I was doing for John when I was training with it. The training partners do for me. It's where it all kind of gets balanced out and navigated.
And it's definitely a skill that you learn over time. Like the
Yes.
closer, if you never spend time in the fire, right, you're never really gonna learn how to keep pushing or
True.
even know where you're at.
Yep.
And I noticed that when I was doing the train your ass off with Dave, it was like everybody jumped on the leg press. They're like, oh, cool. Like we had no idea that was gonna be the worst leg press experience of my life.
Oh, no.
But it was cool to see where as Dave was coaching us, he was kind of mitigating the load enough where it was still redlining, but not like hammering it all the way.
Yeah.
Well, to the point where he's like, all right, he would look at us, he would see what we were doing, and he would kind of understand, like, all right, strip a plate, hold it, breathe, go again. And he would see, and it was just like a little bit of a recharge every single time. And it was really just wringing out any sort of strength or, any sort of whatever we were doing. It really just, it was amazing to see and witness. I mean, it sucked, like when you have your coach standing right there and it's just like, oh shit, like
Yeah, you
don't
just
screw this
keep
up.
going, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was a little bit of that on the hack squat with him as well.
Yep.
because, the closer he got to failure, his
Yeah.
breathing starts to get disrupted.
Yeah, I
So it's
heard
like,
you say
yeah,
that.
it's like
yeah.
no,
I heard
stop,
that, yeah.
hold,
Yeah.
get your air, hold, because that's where
That's
injuries
that
can
panic.
happen.
That's that panic.
Right? Because if he's going down and he's on his way on the eccentric, he's going down, he's or breathing like that's not good. That
Yeah.
is a compromised position. So just hold it, get your air, take your breath, hold it. When you come out, breathe, right? Still stop. Now, those are things that you got to watch. If you're pushing close to training to the edge is necessary, right? But falling off isn't.
Right.
So you got to be able to mitigate
Right.
that, right?
And to be knowledgeable enough to pick an exercise that's not driven by technical skill,
Well, yeah.
right? Like that. I mean, that's something that I think a lot of people need to say. It's not like just grab a barbell on your back and go for sets of 30.
No, you can't do this shit on a squat.
Yeah,
That's
no,
stupid.
absolutely not. And just know it's like not every, like you had said, not every session needs to have those challenge sets. One of the things that you told me is actually at that Train Your Ass Off was, as a strongman, you need to do 2 of these workouts a month.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's like, and it would be very, very based on like time of year, this or that, but safely to have those 2 training days per month that are that hard.
Yeah, I could sit at this table by myself, right? Just sit in this position here and tell you every reason why challenge sets are the best thing for training, and then trade seats and then sit over there and tell myself every reason why they're the worst thing you should ever do for training, right? So you gotta mitigate that, right? Because probably if you really want to be honest about it, it's mental more than anything else, because it's if somebody thinks that they're training hard at a level 6, right? But then I show them what a real level 10 is. Their 6 they just realize their 6 is a 3,
Right.
which changes every set they do on every exercise moving forward. So how else can you do that, right? Except for letting them experience what a 10 is in a safe, controlled manner.
Right,
Now,
yeah.
once they know that, then I can sit there and debate with myself, like, really, what's the point here? That what's being accomplished with this at this point that can't be accomplished doing something else,
Right.
even if it's having to do 2 exercises instead of 1. I can debate myself all night long on that. So it can go either way. I will concede defeat on that argument anytime, because I can defeat myself. But here's the other aspect. It's fucking fun. If you got that messed up mindset, every now and again, you need something like that, right? Just so you can walk out saying, you know what? Yeah, I can still do this shit. Yeah, I can still overcome. I can still, at least for me, that's necessary. There's something there that I have to do stupid shit in my own training just so I know that that's still there, right? And you can always, I'm beat to hell. I can always find a way to find that. You just got to be creative sometimes. But,
Yeah, and that is really important for me in terms of my own training, especially for strongman, because we do have those events. It's like, okay, pick up this Husafell stone that weighs 340 pounds, and it's just max distance.
Yeah.
No time limit.
Yeah.
It's just you, the weight, back and forth, back and forth. And you can see the people who quit.
yeah.
And you can see it in their eyes, and you're like, all right, he's got another 15
Yeah.
feet, and then he's fried.
You
Yeah.
make a good point. I didn't think about that. And a lot of the rep competitions. that you guys
Absolutely.
have, same thing. Yeah,
and it's like,
yeah.
you need to be able to push it as hard as you can for 60 seconds,
Yes.
75 seconds. And it's like, it's a heavy weight. You're
Yeah.
talking 90% plus.
Yes. And that also with that, though, is teaching how to breathe, right? That we
Yeah,
talked
well, that was the
about.
biggest thing, yeah.
Teaching how to control your aggression, right? Because you blow the aggression too soon, you're gonna take it out of the back end of the set. When are you gonna when are you gonna blow the plug when you're not? There's a lot of
Right.
things that got to be mitigated in there, and I'm sure it's the same with with the training that she does, the high volume training that comes into play on what exercise are you going to do this on? Because you do it too soon. Is it worth defeating the purpose that you could get out of the last 3 exercises if there's 8 in the day?
Right.
So say you go and you just kill yourself on the first exercise. I mean, kill yourself.
Yeah.
You just took something away, right? So that's a mental thing, and that's an experience thing. That's not a mental thing. That's an experience thing. Like, where can you push? Where do you do it? How do you do it? And then how's it kind of balance everything out?
It's definitely an important skill to kind of pick up over time. And that's why it's so important to work with coaches who know what the hell they're doing,
Yes.
and just finding
Totally.
those
Yes.
educators in the space, because that little cue that you had with Brett and his breathing, because I was sitting there and I love being out here watching you watch the same thing, because in my head I was like, oh, he's breathing weird. This
I
is
thought
gonna
that
this
too.
isn't this
Yeah.
isn't gonna be good if it continues that way. And it's just that getting to that point where that takes over, because that was not him making the conscious decision. That was his body going into survival mode, where it was like, oh shit, like we're under attack right now. And it took you to say, hey, breathe, and all of a sudden it was, oh, he got a few more reps, and it
Yeah.
looked cleaner, and it was that panic response that I think everybody just kind of defaults to, especially with like a high rep set. Like I saw you do sets of 30 on the belt squat today, and it was like, oh, that sucked at 10.
Yeah.
Like what got you from 10 to 30?
And
You
I
know?
think mentally knowing when you're there, when you're at that like fight or flight, when you're at that flight mode, you gotta tap back into it and go back to fight and really like get after it.
Yep.
And it's by controlling your breathing and really focusing on where am I hitting? Like, am I hitting my quads right now? Like, really focus
that's
on
a
what
good
you're
point
doing.
too, because that's a really good point, because that's a bodybuilding side that I normally don't think about.
Right.
Right, because you can default. Right, say on the belt squat, you could default to flaring the knees more, sitting back more, taking it off the quads, throwing it on the hamstrings. You're going to get more reps. It's going to continue the set.
Yeah.
But you just defeated the purpose of why you're doing
Right.
the movement. Right. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, because if you're going to go through the pain, if you're going to go through that feeling, it needs to be in pursuit of your goal.
Yeah.
Not just survival, right? Like you could just get through the belt squat, but if you're thinking like, okay, quads,
Yeah.
quads, and you focus in on that, like that, now you're getting such a better response, right?
Totally,
It's like people can program in challenge sets, and like Dave said, it's like kind of default to whatever pattern gets them through it.
Yeah.
But to have that wherewithal to focus in on the purpose of the challenge,
And
that's
you know,
super
most
important.
do. And you know, a lot of people that follow John, follow myself, will kind of default back to some of those sessions, but and they see some of the things that we filmed. I mean, granted, these are just camera things that we were just doing at the time. So, but what they don't see, when I think it's misinterpreted a lot, is they don't see the number of sets I had to tell him stop. Right? Because now his back's being compromised. I'm seeing things flexing that aren't supposed to flex. Maybe that was going to be a challenge set. But at that point, it's like, this is not worth it. Stop.
Yep.
We don't film those. You know, you don't post those. But that happens far more than the other sets, right?
Yeah.
The puke sets are just what everybody sees. And maybe that's on us, right? Maybe we've got to post the other things, but nobody's going to watch them.
Right.
You know, but it needs to be understood, though,
Yeah.
that when there's that technical failure, it has to stop.
Yeah.
It has to. If you can't course correct with the breathing or whatever it is, it has to stop.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. So,
Yeah, and like you said, you just kind of have to make sure that all those pieces line up. It's like you're going to take off. It's like, all right, wings are good, engine's good. Oh no, we don't have any wheels. Stop. We're not gonna push it any more than what we have to.
Now, here's the cool thing, though. Using your analogy, when you're flying and you're in that zone, man, that's a fucking hell of a ride, right? I mean, it's just a hell of a ride where you're done, you can't breathe, and you're on the floor. That's perfect landing, man. It's not a crash, but that's a hell of a ride, man. That's the shit I still live for. I love that shit. It's like, oh yeah, this is it, you know.
Absolutely.
Fine. Anymore, I'm like, fuck it, I'm done for the day. This is all I came for. Now you still got other work to do, but that's a hell of a ride. I love that, right?
Absolutely.
So there's another reason why those things need to be in there.
Absolutely.
You know.
And while we were talking, this kind of matches what we were talking about in terms of working with coaches and working with people who know what they're doing. We just got a question from Alan here. He just wants to know what recommendations you can give to help somebody become a better coach and kind of put it and kind of learn this stuff that we're talking about.
I don't want to answer that one. I'm going to have her answer that one because she's worked with several coaches. This doesn't mean that any of these coaches did any of these things bad. This can also be people that you've known that have worked with coaches. What do you look for, right? Or would you suggest other people look for? Or what are the red flags that you see?
So I think with coaching, obviously you don't want someone who's going to give you like a cookie cutter plan. You want to make sure that they know their stuff. I personally believe I look for someone who's done it before. People will call it bro science, but I think that's really important. That's another big reason why I chose John, because he does get super grainy and shredded, and that's what I needed. So I think you got to look for someone who, one, you think can bring you to that level. And two, just when you're doing your research and you're doing your check-ins and, you're kind of meeting that coach, give yourself time to work with that person. It's not going to be like a 2-3 week fix. Like, you're going to have to work with that coach for like 3 months to really kind of see
Maybe longer.
the relationship. Yeah.
They got to learn you too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. You want your coach to know as much as they can about you. So you got to be giving them feedback with the nutrition or training. They got to know like everything about you for it to really work. And I think that's one good thing with me and John is that, I don't blow up his email or anything, but when it's check-in time, I make sure he gets all that information, the important stuff that he needs to make sure that I'm on the right track.
What are the red flags that you've seen other people run into?
I've heard people like comparing diets, like, oh, we have the same diet and we have the same coach. For females, I don't know. I don't want to say the same diet, but like you gotta start somewhere. So even if a coach does give you like a cookie cutter diet, follow that for 3 weeks. I can guarantee you they're going to change something in it. So you need to kind of trust the process. You got to trust the coach. If you don't, then you probably shouldn't be with that person.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been told, and I would probably recommend, it's not the base, it's the adjustments.
Yeah.
Right? So any really good coach can give you basically any base diet, any base program.
Totally.
Right? Because actually probably the more basic at the beginning, the better, because it's going to leave more clues. Now, if they don't adjust from that, then I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
So that's where, but I'll play devil's advocate. What if you're progressing?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If you keep progressing and you're going
Right.
the direction you need to, then maybe that base doesn't need to be changed, but I can disagree with that too. At a certain point, everything has to change. You're
Yeah.
going to be accommodated to that. So,
Yeah, it's and that's something that obviously takes time. It's like you're going to need to put yourself in experiences where you learn from better people. Like as a coach, from the coach's perspective, you need to put yourself in a room where you can learn from people. You can see things being done. You can have conversations, reaching out to people, reading articles, reading webs. Like a really good coach is someone who is constantly learning, constantly evolving, constantly developing their skill, right? But also is able to communicate these things to an athlete.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the reasons, and even I saw it today with just like you and John having a conversation post training.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see the back and forth. It was like you guys are talking, using the same verbiage, the same language. Like he knows how to speak to you. He knows, how to get the most out of you, and you know how to get the most out of him. Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like this challenge back and forth thing. It's like you make him be better. He makes you be better.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that relationship, a coach athlete relationship is really, really important. And
after a while, though, too, 'cause she's been working with him for a while, she has to keep him accountable, too, which sounds weird, right?
No,
But
it's true.
there's some things with the client perspective where the client has to be honest and upfront. If they cheat, they need to say they cheat. I mean, it's a diet. You can't just throw shit in there and just assume that and blame it on the coach. I mean,
Totally.
you screw up, you screw up. You gotta be accountable for that. But the one thing I've seen with client coaching relationships that do last a long time is it almost becomes too personal and it becomes not professional at that point.
Right.
And then little things start to slide, right? Like, okay, yeah, it's okay. You can do this. You can do things that wouldn't have slid 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Now start to slide because they almost become friends more than they become coach client. And that's okay. But that's also at a time where maybe the person needs to find another coach, right?
Pivot out of there.
But they feel weird because they're kind of friends with the person now. And this is where the red flags come in with that, right?
Yeah. I think that's what happened with my last coach.
Yeah.
When John was training me, we became friends. I was with her for like 4 years. We built that friendship. So it was more emotionally hard for me to kind
It
of
is.
part ways because we did develop that friendship. But yeah, with John, I do, keep it very professional. I have his number, but I don't text him
Yeah.
every day
Yeah.
or anything like that. It's if I have something important to tell him or a check-in, it's like email.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
both can be done. I guess what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say here is, it's, and I don't know her. I mean, it could also be on her part too, where if you're fucking up, instead of like in the first 8-10 weeks, she'd be like, look, you're fucking up, and just call it straight out to where like, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'll just let it go. So then the relationship just kind of changes. At the same time, that relationship matures too. right? So there's a lot of dynamics that are going on because it is a relationship, right? But it still is a coach-client relationship. So there's two people that are participating in this, right?
Yeah.
So there's both have to make each other accountable, and both need to be transparent, right? So, and it needs to be, as you said, it still needs to be professional.
Absolutely.
You know, I've heard horror stories with
Oh, I bet.
prep.
I bet that's bad.
Well, just prep with guys, with females, and in the powerlifting sector, it's like, dude, this is not coaching. This is just fucked up, right? And those people probably need to be called out for what they're doing. They
Right.
definitely need to be fired, but there's those things that if anything happens like that, if anything ever happens that makes the person feel uncomfortable, then they should probably
Gotta
find
move
another
on.
coach,
Gotta
right?
move on.
Or
Yeah.
find out why.
Right.
And I think one of the most interesting things, and I think a lot of people get a lot of value, is having two separate coaches, one for nutrition and one for training. Now, when John was working with you as purely training, was he
Yeah.
communicating with your nutrition coach at all?
Yeah, they were going back and forth on email, but I personally don't like that way.
Yeah.
It was too hard.
too much.
It was
I don't like
too,
it either.
Yeah, too many people in my ear, and that's when you start, losing trust in people, and it was too much.
Yeah.
That's why I just kind of let John take over and do nutrition and training. It was just easier for me.
Well, here's the thing with that is, let's just say cardio, right? Some coaches use a lot of cardio
Yeah.
to be able to supplement, the calorie burn. Well, if you're not really aware of what that cardio plan is, what it's going to ramp up week after week, or if it's just going to hold. John's not a big cardio guy. Usually it's just going to hold. It's only going to be used when it really has to be used. Where if the nutrition person thinks it's going to ramp up to 2 hours a day, well, that's a false, that's still, you still have to account for the calories.
Right.
Yeah.
And know where they're going to go, because you're either, if it's not progressing the way it needs to progress, you have a few options, right? You can lower the calories, via however they want to manipulate the macronutrients, but lower the calories or increase the energy.
Yep.
Or, right? So that's increasing the cardio or increasing the volume of the training. Well, what if you do both? Now you're losing too fast. What if you don't do any? Now you're losing too slow. There either needs to be really solid communication, or it has to be the same person.
Right. Yeah, I think having it as the same person obviously would be a much better situation. But that's actually what happened to me. I was working with a coach for my training and working with a coach for my nutrition. This was obviously not a great situation, but it ended up putting me in a very not great health situation because I was working too hard and not sustaining enough calories to work that way.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden I'm the asshole. Right, because now I'm the one that's in the shitty position that was
Yeah.
totally avoidable.
Yep.
If it was just and I that's what I appreciate about what John does, is that he takes into such consideration every step of the way, which is huge. All right, so we had a couple questions come in. Actually, one I really want to know this. We have a few fans of yours talking about your shoe game.
Oh, the Jordans.
Yep. Talking about just admiring your shoe game. Do you want to talk about what is that something you're really passionate about?
Honestly, within the last year, I just started buying Jordans because I liked how they felt when I squatted. The ankle
That's what
support.
Dave says that too.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. So people always ask me, like, how many do you have? I only have 5 pairs. So it's not.
But you like them a lot.
I love them. Yeah. I love the Be Loyals. They're like the newer kind of, maybe not that new, a couple years old, but that style of the Be Loyals are really, really comfy for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Dave, what about you? You still into Jordans?
No. She likes her J's.
Yeah.
When I was dieting, the time I was dieting, I was buying stupid shoes all the time. But then you realize I don't wear them. So they're like, what's the point? I don't
Perfect.
care.
All right, we got a few more questions that came in. Let's see. We have just some fans in here, some women that want to say thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for putting out all the information that you do, all the training that you do, that you are a role model to them. So I just wanted to
that's nice.
bring attention to that as well. We have a question here about how because you both trained with John very closely, right? We want to hear some absolute worst, hardest training sessions that John has made you, Missy, go through, and then Dave.
So before the Arnold, we did a training session together last time I was here, but we were at a different gym in the area. We did these like reverse kettlebell lunges where your foot was kind of elevated. I think he calls them like drops out of death or
The
something.
Bulgarian drops.
Oh, yep.
Yeah,
those
yeah.
suck.
Gosh, that really sucked.
Yeah, those are terrible.
It's still like burned in my brain, but kind of what we were talking about, where you get to that spot in your brain, I can bring myself there with training with Matt. So it's kind of cool that I know when that tapping part is coming to push through.
Yeah.
So that was pretty crazy with John. And today too.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm a little different because I like the challenge. So I like those things. You know, the thing that just I could never get past was the fucking 4 work sets. You know, I'm used to like warming up, working up, and doing 1 or 2 work sets.
Yeah.
It's like 4 work sets with the same fucking weight. It's like, you know, after one, I'm like, I'm ready to go to the next thing. It's like another one. It's another one. It's another. And sometimes it was 6.
Wow.
It's like, dude, I am done. Like, we've done like 80 sets of lat pull downs now, and 10 of them have been work sets. Like, let's just go to the next. I'm bored. Right. So I guess that was probably the biggest thing is for me, the biggest change was the volume, because coming from powerlifting and then even with the bodybuilding that I did experiment with, it was like HIIT training or dog crap training or more lower volume, but super high intensity, which obviously that's what I like. This volume shit, it's boring. It's like, John, come on, man. We've been here for like, it seems to me like an hour.
Yeah.
It's probably 5 minutes. But it's like, come on, we're going to do another set of freaking dumbbell rows? Like, it's the same weight. We've already done this. Let's do the next weight up, or let's just go to the next thing.
Yep.
That, I even after, because it was many years, even after that, it still pissed me off. If I probably will never train with him again, because I know that's going to happen. It's like 1 or 2 work sets. Let's move on. Let's do something else.
Well, it's funny. You can kind of see that with the leg curls in the beginning. You can almost see, it's almost like you walk away. You're like, no, I'm not going to, I can't watch this shit.
It's going to go on forever. Like,
I think we did like 6 sets today of like curls. I was like, oh my God.
yeah, see, and after like 3, most people are done. Like, standard programming is like 3 sets of 10, right? So after 3, you're like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
It's like, no, halfway.
No. It's like,
Halfway,
well,
yeah.
where did the warm-ups end?
We're getting a few nutrition-related questions in here for you, Missy. We have a few people that have noticed that you have a lot of recipes and that you seem to incorporate a lot of like granite supplements into your diet and into your snacks and whatnot. Do you have any advice in terms of people that want to kind of start utilizing some of those into their own nutrition, or any tips that you can give them specifically?
Sure. So I think with Granite Supplements protein powder is like a 5 blended protein. So you got the casein, beef, egg white, isolate, and whey. I find that it mixes really, really well with cream of rice and peanut butter. So that's like the John Meadows. I think he calls it like a butter bowl, nut butter bowl. It's an amazing pre-workout meal. For females, 1/4 cup of cream of rice, scoop of protein powder, tablespoon of peanut butter. Guys can probably go to either 1/2 cup or a cup, depending on how big they are. But gosh, that sits so well on your stomach. You'd think it would kind of bloat you. But with Granite's protein powder, they have incorporated digestive enzymes in it. So it sits really well, digests well. You don't get like bloating or gas. So I do really like that one.
How do you make chicken not taste like terrible chicken?
Well, I actually am sponsored by the Chicken Pound now, so
There you go.
his name's Carlo. Yeah, he's out in New Jersey, and he just sends my husband and I 20 pounds of chicken every month.
Well, you still have to cook it. You
No.
know, you don't
It's
have
cooked.
to cook it?
It's cooked, yeah. So if you use coupon code Missy10, you'll save some money. Thanks for the plug.
So there's different flavors to it then?
Yeah.
So it doesn't taste like chicken?
Yeah, he's got like balsamic, teriyaki, jerk chicken, contest prep, which is the one I get, and you can just put your own sauce on it and everything. But gosh, that's made my life so easy. Like you literally just take it out of the freezer and let it thaw, and you can cook it in a pan, like just kind of heat it up a little, and then I use my Uncle Ben's rice, and boom, there's my post-workout. So it's convenient.
There's her recipes. Uncle
was
Ben's
it.
rice and prepared chicken.
Really good. Really good.
I'm all about efficient and timing.
So another nutrition question is, like, when you're in the heart of prep, when you're in the last few weeks, what sort of tips and tricks can you give people to kind of stay the course as when it gets as hard as it ever gets?
Knowing that the feeling is going to go away soon. but not wanting it to go away. I honestly like feeling like that. I like knowing that I can push my body to an extreme, crazy, whatever, dryness, leanness, mental fatigue, because not many people can go to that dark side. And like I said before, once you get to that dark side, you know you can get there. I like feeling that struggle, that suffer. Maybe it's weird, but I like it.
So just embracing it, right? So
Right.
what's the Marine thing? Embrace the suck.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's got to feed into the fact that you're the world champ, right?
Ms.Fitness
Like,
Olympia, yeah.
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset is something that you find with a lot of high achievers and a lot of what they do, right? Is the fact that like the hard part is like kind of the fun part.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I really do.
I do think that just overall with anything that's like that or anything that's really hard, from what I've seen and myself personally, when you look for the distractions, it's harder because the distraction will work, but you always come right back to what you're trying to get distracted from, which makes it almost kind of worse.
Yep.
If you just realize this is it, this is what it is, like you embrace it.
Yeah,
You know,
lean into it.
That's probably where that whole thing comes from, right?
Yeah.
You just lean into it like this is what it is, accept it for what it is, and just keep moving. Because, like I said, the distractions, they work. They can work, and it's a good break. But keep in mind, you needed this. It's over and over that drives you insane, right? Because you get the break, then it's like, damn, this sucks.
Yeah.
Then it's like, damn, this sucks. Where if just realize it sucks and write it out, it's way better. It's hard to explain, but it's way better.
Well, that's essentially, not to shift too much, but have you read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning?
Yeah.
That's pretty much what he says in there, is the people that were having a harder time were the ones that had that hope that it would change at a certain time.
No, you gotta accept it
And the people that had the better outcomes, it was the ones that embraced it as, this is what I'm doing right now. This is what my goals are. This is what my focus is right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a much darker example, but it kind of paints the fact that it's like you have to lean into the process. So I would say that you're more process oriented as opposed to like goal oriented.
True.
It's like you do the things
Yeah.
that lead you to that point,
Yeah.
and the byproduct is the goal,
Totally.
right?
Yep. I agree.
It kind of needs to be that way, though, right? Because I'll use her as an example, right? So the end goal, if you want to call it that, was winning,
Yeah.
right? So you win. It's awesome, right? So you're standing up there. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Next day's awesome, right?
Yeah.
Flying home's awesome. Seeing the people that you haven't seen that are congratulating is awesome. A week later, nobody knows who the fuck you are,
Right.
right? You go back to the store and nobody knows, right? So winning's temporary, right? Winning's just the reward for doing the things that you were supposed to do. And I wouldn't even necessarily say it's actually the reward, because as soon as it's over, it's over.
That's it.
Yeah.
It just lasts a very short period of time. It's great, but if that's all you're doing it for, you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
You see,
Absolutely.
because that's not the reality. The reality is winning isn't that great. Winning just leads to losing. You see what I'm saying? It's just how it is. It's put up there like this is the ultimate thing, and it's what you strive for, and it's all those other things. But it's not what people think it is. Ask anybody that's spent their life trying to achieve one certain thing.
I think that's why a lot of the older women who have retired are trying to come back into fitness to fill that void.
Yes.
And I don't ever want to be like, once I, say I'm retired, I want to stay retired. I don't want to, and I don't think I would ever try to fill that void with fitness, because I can fall back on phlebotomy and other stuff in my life. And right now, I am just focusing on fitness. So that's why
the thing is, are they filling the void because of the process, or are they filling the void because they want to win?
I don't know. I'm
right?
not sure. Yeah.
I'm kind of going to lean to say it's because they love that process so much. They love striving for that one thing.
Yeah.
Because all winning, no matter what it is still anticlimactic. Tell me
Yes.
I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, you've
Yeah.
been to the highest level,
Yep.
right? Tell me I'm wrong, right? But that process is what's addicting.
Totally.
Because it gives purpose.
Yep.
Right. So, and that's great. So when it comes to that retiring and moving away from strength sports, this is something I know a lot about because I talk to a lot of guys that run into these issues.
Right.
What's that other purpose going to be? What's going to fill that? You can still do these things and fill certain parts of that, but where's this energy going to go?
Yeah.
right? Because it's it's energy that makes people do great things, but many people don't know how to apply it anywhere else.
Yeah.
And all the skills are there. I mean, that's part of the reason why I started the company. It's why I wrote the Under the Bar book. All the skills are there. They're all taught there. They just haven't figured out how to apply it, you know, to the other things, or how to connect those dots, right? So in strength sport, I'm not saying this is true with the people that you're talking about, but I see it happen in the powerlifting sector a lot. They you know, they drift back because that's their comfortable, you know, that's where they're comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And if they just reapplied it into something else, they could find that same thing. But it's going to take, here's what they forget. To reapply it to something else doesn't mean that they're going to be at that same level they were. They're going to be at the very bottom of that shit, suck, good, great. And it's going to take a fuckload of work again.
Right.
So when I say they know all those skills, they know all the skills, but the biggest skill they want that they're forgetting about is how hard they worked to get to the level they were at. And they need to understand, if they go into whatever the other trade is, if it's carpentry, whatever it's going to be, you're down here and you need to put in all that work again.
Yeah.
Right. And it's overwhelming, but they got to remember they already did it before. They know the process. You know
And
what I'm saying?
I think it's fair to say that like everything's kind of evolving too with like a lot of our sports, powerlifting,
Oh, yes.
fitness, bodybuilding, like the level of expertise is just kind of growing. So
Most definitely.
if you're the top right now, in 2 years, you could be under now. You could
Yeah.
be third. There's another person who's kind of swooped in. So
Yes.
yeah, we're all just kind of evolving. So it's
And
a
I
lot
would say
harder.
it's evolving at a faster rate every year.
Totally.
It's definitely picking up.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good way to pull this whole thing full circle from the initial. So that's all the questions that we have. We'll wait a minute or two to see if anything comes up. But if you want to, you know, take this in for a landing.
That's your job.
Yeah.
So I'm good.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us today. Missy, again, thank you very much for coming out. It was an absolute pleasure. Learned a ton. It was great to see you working with John, training your ass off. But as always, guys, if you enjoyed this, make sure you like, share, subscribe. And for all of your anything that requires putting weight on, right? What is it?
Anything that can go in a gym bag or anything you can load weights on, we have.
That's it.
elitefts.com.
Beautiful. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you in the next one. Nice.
Woo.